Hello there and welcome to The Ancient Historian, where curiosity gets cozy and science takes the scenic route to slumber. Tonight we begin a journey not forward but backward into the deep history of our planet. Our focus is a time long before people, long before the first civilizations, even long before the first great empires of the ancient world. Instead, we're traveling to a period where ice ruled the land, shaping mountains, oceans, and the very path of life itself. The Ice Age. When we talk about the Ice Age, we're not speaking of just one long frozen stretch, but a series of glacial and interglacial cycles that shaped Earth over the past 2.6 million years. Span scientists call the Quaternary period. During these ages of ice, vast sheets of frozen glaciers crept across continents, covering much of North America, Europe, and Asia. At their peak, these icy blankets were over 2 miles thick, so heavy they pressed down entire landscapes, reshaping valleys, carving out great lakes, and sculpting the geography we still see today. But this wasn't a world of endless frost. The Ice Age was a rhythm, a pulse of Earth's climate periods of deep cold followed by warmer intervals where ice retreated, rivers surged, and forests returned. The animals that walked this frozen world were both strange and familiar. Mighty mammoths and mastodons, saber-toothed cats with teeth like daggers, giant sloths the size of small cars, and herds of bison and reindeer. It was a land of giants, adapted to survive in bitter cold, where survival depended on thick coats, sharp tusks, and the ability to find food buried beneath the snow. This era also saw the first humans step onto the stage. Our ancestors walked the same icy paths as mammoths and saber-tooths, learning to hunt, to make tools, to tame fire, and to endure the harshest climates nature had ever tested them with. In many ways, the Ice Age forged humanity itself, teaching us resilience, adaptation, and ingenuity. So tonight, as we explore the Ice Age, we'll journey across frozen tundras and icy mountains, dive into the cycles of glaciers and warm spells, meet the extraordinary creatures that called this cold world home, and discover how the Ice Age came to an end, giving rise to the world. Settle in, let the frost settle on your imagination, and picture a planet both alien and familiar. The Ice Age wasn't just a time of hardship, it was a time of transformation. A time that reshaped continents, wildlife, and even us. Without it, the Earth, and humanity's place upon it, might have looked very, very different. To picture the Ice Age, let's step back tens of thousands of years into a world very different from our own. Earth, as we know it today, with its cities, warm lights, and bustling human life, was still far away. Instead, vast blankets of ice stretched across continents, reshaping the land beneath them. Imagine mountains smoothed by slow-moving glaciers, valleys carved into deep U-shapes by the weight of frozen rivers, and oceans locked away in sheets of ice, so immense that sea levels dropped by more than 300 feet compared to today. This period, often called the Pleistocene epoch, began around 2.6 million years ago, and lasted until about 11,700 years ago. It wasn't one endless freeze, but rather a cycle of glacial advances and retreats. The Earth would swing from colder glacial periods when ice expanded, to warmer interglacial periods, when the ice retreated and life flourished again. During the height of the Ice Age, enormous ice sheets covered much of North America, Northern Europe, and Asia. In North America, a sheet called the Laurentide Ice Sheet stretched thousands of miles, burying what is now Canada and parts of the northern United States under ice a mile thick. In Europe, another sheet, the Fennoscandian Ice Sheet, spread over Scandinavia and down into Germany and Poland. These colossal glaciers didn't just sit there. They advanced slowly, crushing forests, grinding mountains, and reshaping landscapes as they went. But while so much of the planet was frozen, the Ice Age wasn't a single white world. Beyond the edges of the ice, grasslands stretched far and wide. These were the mammoth steppe ecosystems, where hardy plants adapted to cold grew in abundance. Here, giant animals roamed. Woolly mammoths with shaggy coats and curved tusks, massive woolly rhinoceroses, saber-toothed cats, and towering ground sloths. These creatures weren't just survivors. They thrived in the bitter cold, perfectly adapted to harsh winters and short, cool summers. The climate was harsher, yes, but it was also incredibly dynamic. Deserts expanded in some regions, while heavy rains nourished others. Sea levels were dramatically lower, exposing vast land bridges. One of the most famous was the Bering Land Bridge, which connected Siberia and Alaska. This bridge allowed animals and eventually the first humans to migrate between continents, forever shaping the history of life on Earth. The Ice Age was not just about cold, but about change. Landscapes shifted, species adapted, and entire ecosystems rose and fell as the ice advanced and retreated. It was a world of giants, of extremes, and of constant transformation. A stage set for the great dramas of survival that would define this frozen age. The Ice Age was not just about snow, ice, and glaciers, it was also about survival. Despite the bitter cold and harsh landscapes, Earth was teeming with life. The frozen world created challenges, but it also gave rise to some of the most legendary creatures ever to walk, roam, or soar across the planet. Let's start with the giants of the Ice Age, the megafauna. Mammoths, towering with their shaggy coats and long curved tusks, were the true icons of this era. Imagine vast herds slowly moving across frozen plains, using their tusks to sweep aside snow in search of grasses and shrubs. They were joined by the woolly rhinoceros, an equally impressive beast armored with thick fur, and a massive horn that could be used to defend against predators or dig through icy ground. And predators there were plenty. The saber-toothed cats with their long curved fangs stalked the grasslands, waiting for a chance to ambush. The cave lions, larger than today's African lions, ruled the colder regions of Europe and Asia. The mighty short-faced bear, standing taller than a human even on all fours, was one of the most formidable carnivores North America had ever seen. But life wasn't just about the giants. The Ice Age supported smaller, hardy creatures as well. Musk oxen, reindeer, and bison roamed in herds, feeding on the limited vegetation. Rodents, rabbits, and other small mammals burrowed into the snow to escape the cold. Even birds adapted, some migrating vast distances while others stayed behind, toughing out the long winters. Surprisingly, humans were also part of this frozen world. Early Homo sapiens and their close relatives, the Neanderthals, adapted to the Ice Age with remarkable ingenuity. They learned to make fire, create warm clothing from animal hides, and build shelters to withstand the brutal cold. They hunted mammoths and reindeer, crafting tools from bones and stone. In the dark caves of Europe, they even left behind art paintings of animals that still speak across tens of thousands of years, reminders of life in the cold. The Ice Age world, then, was not lifeless or empty. It was vibrant, full of creatures that had evolved to thrive under extreme conditions. But this delicate balance between ice, life, and survival would eventually face challenges that even the hardiest animals could not overcome. The Ice Age was not a frozen eternity. It was a living, breathing cycle of advancing and retreating ice. For thousands of years, glaciers surged outward, blanketing the northern continents. Then, just as slowly, they melted back, reshaping valleys, rivers, and coastlines. These shifts were tied to the Earth's rhythms, the tilt of its axis, the wobble in its orbit, and even the subtle changes in how far it drifted from the sun. As the great ice sheets melted, seas began to rise. What had once been wide, grassy plains became coastlines, bays, and islands. Land bridges that connected continents, like the one between Asia and North America, were swallowed by the rising waters, cutting off migrations and changing the paths of life forever. The climate itself swung like a pendulum. There were cold glacial phases when ice ruled, followed by warmer interglacials when forests stretched north and animals roamed more freely. These changes were not sudden crashes, but slow drifts, measured in centuries. Imagine generations of animals adapting, shifting, and moving with each turn of the Earth's great cycles. The melting also unleashed powerful rivers. When the walls of ice cracked and collapsed, torrents of meltwater carved deep valleys and sculpted landscapes we still see today. The Great Lakes of North America, the fjords of Scandinavia, the winding rivers of Siberia. The Earth itself became a canvas painted by ice and water, shaped over millennia into the world we now inherit. While ice and snow dominated much of the landscape, life during the Ice Age was remarkably diverse, resilient, and adapted to extreme conditions. Every plant, every animal, and even early humans were part of a delicate dance with a world in constant flux, each playing a role in the frozen ecosystems that stretched across continents. Let's begin with the megafauna, the unmistakable giants of the Ice Age. Woolly mammoths, with their thick coats of fur and massive tusks, roamed the tundras in herds, sweeping snow aside to uncover the hardy grasses and mosses that formed their diet. Woolly rhinoceroses, equally adapted for the cold, used their horns to dig through snow and ice, foraging for vegetation that few other creatures could reach. Both species were perfectly designed for survival in extreme temperatures, yet even they were not invincible. Predators thrived alongside these giants. Saber-toothed cats, with fangs longer than a modern lion's jaw, stalked their prey silently across the frozen steppes. Cave lions, larger and heavier than any lions alive today, ruled the open plains, while short-faced bears, terrifying in size, scavenged and hunted with formidable strength. These predators were not mindless killers. They were critical to maintaining balance in ecosystems, keeping herbivore populations in check and shaping migration patterns. But not all life depended on size. Smaller mammals, birds, and insects played equally important roles. Rodents burrowed beneath the snow, feeding on seeds and vegetation hidden under the ice. Rabbits and hares thrived in the sparse grasslands, while birds adapted either by migrating long distances or by finding shelter and food in the tundra. Even insects, often overlooked, contributed to soil health and plant reproduction, proving that survival was not just a matter of strength, but of adaptation to the harsh environment. Plants, though fewer in number than in warmer climates, were also specialized. Hardy grasses, mosses, and shrubs dominated the steppe tundra regions. Lichens and fungi flourished in the colder zones, breaking down rock and organic material to form soil and supporting smaller herbivores. Forests retreated to sheltered valleys and southern regions during glacial peaks, only to expand as the ice receded during interglacial periods. These plants formed the backbone of Ice Age ecosystems, providing food, shelter, and sustenance for countless species. Humans, too, were a part of this frozen landscape. Early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals hunted large mammals like mammoths and bison, used plants for food and medicine, and crafted shelters to survive harsh winters. They wore clothing made from animal hides, made tools from bones and stone, and mastered fire to endure temperatures that would have been deadly without innovation. Their survival depended not only on strength, but on knowledge, ingenuity, and cooperation. In the oceans, life adapted in parallel ways. Cold-adapted fish, seals, walruses, and early whales thrived in the frigid waters, while plankton and other microscopic organisms sustained the marine food web. Glacial meltwater influenced ocean currents, creating nutrient-rich zones that allowed marine life to flourish, even as the surface of the planet froze. The Ice Age, therefore, was not a lifeless world of snow and ice. It was a dynamic, interconnected web of species giants and small creatures, predators and prey, plants and humans, all navigating an ever-changing, often hostile environment. Each organism's survival depended on adaptation, ingenuity, and resilience. Life persisted, endured, and evolved, leaving behind a legacy of fossils, footprints, and genetic clues that still speak to us today. The ecosystems of the Ice Age reveal a planet both harsh and beautiful, where survival required innovation, cooperation, and the ability to endure extremes. Every tundra, every frozen river, every sparse forest was teeming with life, hidden yet vibrant, reminding us that even in the coldest, most challenging environments, nature finds a way to flourish. In a world where the Ice Age never ends, humans are forced to evolve in ways that would reshape everything about our species. Imagine a landscape entirely frozen, where forests are stunted, rivers frozen solid, and vast plains stretch endlessly under snow and ice. Every step outside carries the threat of frostbite, starvation, or predators stalking silently through drifts. In such a world, evolution would favor traits that maximize survival in cold, harsh environments, and human beings themselves would look and behave differently than they do today. The body would become the first battleground for adaptation. Humans would grow shorter and stockier, compact forms designed to conserve heat, their torsos rounded and muscles dense to store energy efficiently. Limbs might shorten slightly to reduce heat loss, fingers and toes more robust and thickened to resist frostbite. Skin would likely become paler to maximize vitamin D absorption in limited sunlight, but certain populations might develop thicker layers of natural insulation-dense hair covering parts of the body, or subcutaneous fat more prominent, forming a biological coat against the relentless. Facial features could evolve as well. Nose shapes might lengthen or compress depending on airflow and warmth retention. Eyes could become larger or more deeply set to protect against the glare of sun on snow and ice, and cheekbones could strengthen to aid in chewing frozen, tough food. Humans might develop heightened senses, better night vision to navigate long winters, improved hearing to detect predators beneath the wind, and sharper smell to locate prey or scavenge in buried landscapes. Every physical adaptation would reflect the constant need to survive where heat is scarce, food is rare, and danger is always close. Culture and intelligence would also adapt. In a frozen world, survival is constant, but ingenuity is rewarded. Humans would create highly specialized tools to cut, dig, and hunt in ice. Flint knives would become more precise, bone implements sharper, and clothing crafted with incredible skill. Communities might develop cooperative hunting strategies, so complex that early humans could coordinate attacks on mammoth herds or saber-toothed predators. Communication would be crucial. Languages might evolve with highly specific vocabulary for snow conditions, animal behavior, and ice navigation. Words and phrases describing subtle changes in terrain or wind could mean life or death. Social structures would likely be tight-knit and hierarchical in practical ways. Strong leaders might emerge not just from charisma, but from proven ability to guide others through blizzards, locate hidden food caches, and fend off predators. Families and tribes would remain close, often sleeping together for warmth, sharing responsibilities, and pooling knowledge about survival skills. Rituals would evolve around fire, hunting, and survival milestones, with storytelling serving as both entertainment and critical education. Every tale would carry life lessons: where to find food, how to read the sky, when to migrate, how to avoid dangers that lurk in the cold. The diet of these humans would shape evolution as well. Without agriculture, humans would depend heavily on hunting, fishing, and gathering. High-protein diets of mammoth, bison, and fish would dominate, while plants would be seasonal and sparse, pushing humans to develop tools and techniques to process tough roots, frozen berries, or lichens. They might even discover ways to ferment or preserve limited plant matter, experimenting with smoke, cold, or fermentation techniques. Nutrition would dictate not only survival, but reproductive success, favoring individuals who could efficiently digest and process available resources. Cognitive evolution would be remarkable. Navigating a frozen, featureless landscape would require exceptional spatial awareness and memory. Humans would need to track animal migrations, seasonal shifts, and ice conditions. Knowledge would become a survival currency, maps etched into rock, pathways carved in snowdrifts, and oral traditions memorized across generations. This would lead to intricate mental mapping, problem-solving skills, and perhaps even early mathematical concepts used to predict weather patterns or herd movements. Intelligence would be measured by the ability to anticipate danger, locate scarce resources, and innovate under extreme conditions. Humans might also evolve psychological resilience in unique ways. Endless cold and scarcity would forge communities that value cooperation, patience, and endurance. Stress tolerance would be higher. Emotional responses would be tempered by the constant awareness that impulsive decisions could be fatal. Empathy and social bonds would strengthen as survival depends on trusting and protecting one another in ways not required in more temperate environments. Group cohesion would be essential, with social ostracism or betrayal carrying immediate consequences in life or death scenarios. Even reproduction and child-rearing would evolve in response to the Ice Age world. Infants born with slightly higher body fat or stronger musculature might survive longer, favoring genetic traits adapted to cold survival. Communities would likely invest heavily in child care, ensuring that knowledge of survival techniques passes quickly. Every child would be trained to read snow and ice, hunt, craft clothing, and build shelters. Early adolescence might involve long treks with parents or elders, learning the rhythms of the frozen world firsthand. Education would be entirely experiential, embedded in survival rather than abstract thought, though it could also foster storytelling, art, and early symbolic communication as a tool for teaching and unity. Technology would continue to shape evolution. Humans might discover ways to harness geothermal heat, create windbreaks, and engineer temporary shelters out of ice or stone. Fire would become sacred, a constant companion in both practical and spiritual senses. Communities could specialize in different survival techniques, some mastering hunting and tracking, others trapping and food preservation, others tool-making or fire management. These specializations would drive social roles and possibly even lead to early forms of division of labor, allowing humans to survive and thrive in a world that offers no easy sustenance. And yet, humans would not just endure, they would innovate. Early art could emerge from ice carvings, animal hides, and fossil pigments, expressing identity, territory, or sacred stories. Ceremonies might be tied to migrations, animal hunts, or celestial phenomena, with auroras and long winters inspiring myths and legends. Humans in a perpetual ice age would learn to observe, predict, and manipulate their environment with unparalleled precision. Survival would be hardwired into culture, shaping behavior, intelligence, and social dynamics in ways that echo across generations. Standing in a frozen valley, watching mammoths drift across the white plains, saber-toothed cats stalking shadows, and the aurora flickering above, humans of this world are not weak or fragile. They are extraordinary adaptations. Every trait, every behavior, every tool crafted from bone, stone, or hide reflects a species transformed by unending cold. In such a world, humans are not merely survivors. They are masters of endurance, ingenuity, and resilience, shaped by ice as much as by fire, carving a life from a planet locked in frost. In a world where the ice age never ended, imagine cities not bustling with greenery or temperate weather, but buried beneath endless layers of snow and ice. The very concept of civilization changes when warmth and fertile land are scarce. Settlements would be clustered in narrow belts of survivable climate, perhaps near geothermal springs, volcanic regions, or slightly temperate equatorial zones. Large portions of continents that once supported sprawling civilizations would now be frozen wastelands, their ruins hidden beneath kilometers of ice, waiting for archaeologists of the far future or survivors in this alternate timeline to uncover them. Human architecture would evolve around survival first, permanence second. Massive structures would be constructed with heavy stone, reinforced with mammoth bones or thick layers of ice. Roofs would be steep and rounded to prevent snow accumulation from crushing interiors. Cities would not expand horizontally across plains but instead grow vertically, burrowing partially into the ice and snow, forming fortified settlements resistant to blizzards, avalanches, and extreme wind. The streets might be narrow tunnels carved beneath snowdrifts, lit by fire or phosphorescent moss, creating a labyrinthine network where movement above ground is often impossible. Trade, travel, and interaction between communities would be extraordinary feats of endurance. Roads over ice would be perilous. Rivers and lakes frozen solid would serve as highways for sleds pulled by dogs or domesticated mammoths. Communication between settlements would rely on runners, trained birds, or signal fires visible across frozen plains. Even the simplest journeys could take weeks, with travelers risking frostbite, avalanches, and predator attacks. Communities that survived would do so by sharing knowledge and resources, creating intricate networks of mutual dependence. Within these frozen cities, every object and innovation would be sacred in practical ways. Tools, clothing, and shelters would be constantly repaired, reused, or repurposed. Buildings might include hidden ice cellars to preserve food, insulation layers of fur and bone, and communal fire pits for warmth and cooking. The architecture itself would be adapted to the environment, with walls carved to redirect wind, floors designed to minimize heat loss, and roofs that double as lookout points over the ice-covered terrain. Even the smallest design decision could mean life or death. And yet, beauty would persist amidst the frozen monotony. Windows might be carved from translucent ice blocks, stained with pigments from crushed minerals or berries, allowing weak sunlight to create shimmering patterns inside shelters. Public spaces could feature sculptures of animals central to survival: mammoths, saber-toothed cats, birds etched into ice walls. Art would serve practical and spiritual functions, markers of identity, storytelling devices, or talismans to protect against the unrelenting cold. Every carved surface or decorated object would carry meaning, both functional and symbolic. Religion, myth, and legend would be deeply entwined with survival. Cities might worship heat sources, fire spirits, or the sun as a distant and weak deity. Rituals could revolve around hunting milestones, migrations, or celestial events that predict changes in climate or animal patterns. Even the aurora borealis would inspire awe and devotion, its dancing lights interpreted as messages from ancestors, warnings of coming storms, or omens guiding migration paths. Entire belief systems could evolve around the necessity of enduring the ice and respecting the giants that roam it. Science and experimentation, if they developed at all, would be driven by survival imperatives. Humans might study patterns of ice and snow, track mammoth migrations, or observe predators to improve hunting strategies. Knowledge would become communal property, meticulously passed down through generations via oral tradition, symbolic markings, or etched records preserved in ice or stone. These proto-scientific methods would allow communities to thrive, even under conditions that would be impossible for less resourceful societies. Despite the extreme conditions, some settlements might grow into complex cities, especially near geothermal hot springs or volcanic regions where warmth and water persist. These cities would be self-contained ecosystems, relying on aquaculture, hunting, and ingenious methods of heat generation. Underground tunnels could connect homes, workshops, and storage areas, forming labyrinths beneath ice that are more resilient than above-ground structures. Massive walls of ice and stone would protect inhabitants from blizzards and predator incursions. Lighting would come from fires, torches, and reflective surfaces, casting long shadows on icy walls. History in such cities would be recorded differently as well. Without paper or soft clay, inscriptions might be etched into stone, bone, or frozen surfaces. Symbols and pictographs would encode hunting routes, animal migrations, seasonal changes, and spiritual stories. Libraries of ice and stone could emerge, frozen repositories preserving knowledge for centuries. Even art and writing would serve practical functions. Warning signs for thin ice, maps of hidden food sources, or diagrams for constructing better shelters. Every stroke of a carving or etching would carry life-sustaining weight. Imagine wandering through one of these ice-covered cities. The air is crisp and dry, carrying the faint scent of smoke, animal fat, and preserved food. Wind whistles through openings in the walls, echoing across frozen corridors. Children practice hunting skills in protected courtyards, their laughter muffled by layers of furs and ice. Elders sit by communal fires, telling stories of distant lands, ancient storms, and the great giants that roam beyond the city limits. The frozen streets, lined with sturdy structures, are bustling in small but determined ways, each inhabitant contributing to the survival of the whole. The cities themselves would shape human evolution, favoring traits like endurance, patience, cooperation, and ingenuity. Generations would grow up intimately connected to their environment, understanding snow, ice, animal behavior, and weather patterns in ways modern humans can barely imagine. Every decision from what to wear, to how to hunt, to when to migrate would be critical. Human cognition would sharpen around problem-solving in extreme conditions, fostering innovation and adaptation under constant pressure. Predators, rival tribes, and environmental hazards would always be nearby. Saber-toothed cats might stalk the outskirts, waiting for careless hunters or stragglers. Mammoths wandering too close to settlements could unintentionally destroy fragile structures. Avalanches, blizzards, and shifting ice would claim lives unpredictably. Yet, humans would adapt, learning to read subtle signs in the landscape. The creak of shifting ice, the tracks of distant herds, the change in wind before a storm. The very essence of civilization becomes mastery over frozen chaos, a delicate balance between endurance and ingenuity. In such an ice age world, lost civilizations would be buried and preserved beneath ice long before archaeologists could ever find them. Cities built on permafrost could remain intact for tens of thousands of years, frozen monuments to human tenacity. Streets, buildings, and artifacts would be preserved like frozen snapshots of survival, revealing how humans adapted, innovated, and thrived in a world where warmth is a rarity and the ice is eternal. Life and culture would persist not despite the cold, but because of it, shaping humans into a species intimately connected to, and shaped by, the frozen earth. In a world where the ice age never ended, the oceans themselves would be transformed. Picture vast expanses of frozen water stretching across the planet, ice sheets thick enough in places to bear the weight of large predators and human travelers. The once fluid rhythm of tides and currents would slow and freeze in many regions, creating labyrinths of ice channels, frozen bays, and partially submerged glaciers that stretch from the poles toward the equator. Ships would not sail across blue waves, but would traverse icy plains. Sleds replacing sails, and survival at sea would demand innovation and courage beyond anything imagined in our warmer timeline. Underneath this frozen surface, marine life would adapt in extraordinary ways. Fish species would evolve to survive near freezing temperatures, their bodies producing natural antifreeze proteins to prevent their blood from solidifying. Schools of small fish would move slowly, conserving energy in dark, frigid waters. Predators like giant sharks or ancient relatives of whales would develop thick blubber and specialized hunting strategies, navigating beneath the ice to locate clusters of prey. The ocean, though frozen above, would remain alive below, a hidden ecosystem of life thriving in the dark cold. Sea mammals would become giants in their own right. Seals, walruses, and whales would be larger, with denser fur or thicker fat layers, adapted to swim in near-frozen waters for long periods. Hunting strategies would evolve alongside them. Killer whales or other apex predators might collaborate in pods to crack through ice to reach prey, or drive fish into natural ice channels where their movements could be controlled and exploited. Life in the ocean would be a delicate balance of survival, adaptation, and opportunistic hunting beneath a seemingly dead frozen surface. The frozen oceans would also create new geographical challenges. Coastal areas that once teemed with life would be inaccessible, covered by ice shelves and shifting glaciers. Rivers flowing into the sea might freeze, altering salinity and nutrient distribution, forcing marine species to adapt to entirely new conditions. Food chains would shift, favoring creatures that can survive extreme cold, navigate under ice, and exploit the seasonal openings in frozen waters. Predators that once hunted in open waters would have to master ambush tactics under ice, using the limited light filtering down through cracks to surprise prey. In some regions, icebergs would drift like islands, carrying animals, algae, and plankton trapped in frozen layers. These moving ecosystems would act as mobile oases, sustaining small populations of fish, seals, and birds. Humans, too, might exploit these frozen highways, traveling along ice floes, fishing through cracks, and hunting seals and whales where ice thickness allows access. Ocean navigation would be a blend of careful observation, intuition, and courage, with every journey across ice potentially life-threatening, but also necessary for survival. Marine plant life, too, would adapt. Phytoplankton would evolve to thrive in low-light, high-pressure conditions beneath ice sheets, forming the foundation of the frozen marine food web. Kelp forests might shift closer to geothermal vents, creating localized underwater oases where fish and smaller marine mammals could gather. Even in a frozen world, life finds pockets of abundance, thriving in these microhabitats, creating a complex and interdependent ecosystem beneath the seemingly lifeless surface. Glacial melting, partial and seasonal in some regions, would trigger bursts of activity. Freshwater influx from melting ice would create pockets of brackish water, teeming with adapted species, attracting predators and scavengers. Communities of humans living near the coast would exploit these seasonal pulses, timing their hunting and fishing expeditions with incredible precision. Knowledge of tides, ice thickness, and seasonal changes would be essential, transforming the oceans into both lifelines and challenges for survival. Human ingenuity would extend into the ocean itself. Submerged ice caves, partially frozen fjords, and glacial tunnels could become hunting grounds or shelter, allowing early humans to fish, hunt, and collect resources in ways unimaginable in our temperate world. They might develop tools to break ice safely, nets adapted to frozen conditions, and sleds capable of transporting large catches across snow. Survival would require an intimate understanding of how ice and water interact, creating a culture and technology entirely dictated by frozen oceans. The frozen seas would also amplify natural phenomena. Icebergs shifting unexpectedly could crush habitats or create temporary barriers for predators and prey. Snowstorms could blanket frozen oceans in minutes, creating disorientation and danger. The aurora above, reflecting off the ice and water, would guide hunters and travelers at night, creating visual cues embedded in survival knowledge. Life in these oceans would be a constant negotiation between opportunity and danger. Each day a battle to read the landscape and exploit the limited resources available. Imagine standing on the edge of a frozen coastline. Ice stretches into the horizon, jagged and shimmering under pale sunlight. Beneath the surface, schools of fish move slowly. Seals breathe in cracks, and whales glide through frigid water unseen. The wind howls, carrying a bite of cold across snow-packed beaches. Human hunters track prey across ice, sleds laden with tools and supplies, ready to exploit every opening in the frozen expanse. In this world, the oceans are not merely barriers, they are alive, dynamic, and intertwined with the survival of every species, including humans, forcing life itself to evolve in astonishing ways. Imagine a sky stretched pale and unyielding, a sun that hovers weakly above a world locked in ice. In a never-ending ice age, the sun itself becomes a distant, almost mythical presence, casting light that is feeble and cold, incapable of warming the frozen land. For much of the year, it barely rises above the horizon, scattering a ghostly glow over snowfields that shimmer like crushed diamonds. Days can feel eternal in their grayness, and nights stretch endlessly, punctuated only by the cold glint of stars reflected across ice and snow. The light that does reach the frozen earth behaves differently, diffused by the reflection of endless snow and ice. Shadows stretch across the tundra like long, frozen fingers, shifting with the weak sun as it creeps across the horizon. Every day is a study in subtle tiny changes in brightness or angle carry meaning. Humans, animals, and plants alike would evolve heightened sensitivity to this light, using it to track seasons, migrations, and the behavior of predators. Even the faintest glimmer can mean life or death in a world dominated by cold. The sun's weakness shapes the environment itself. Ice sheets expand, glaciers creep forward imperceptibly but inexorably, and frozen rivers stretch into valleys that were once green. Snow and frost accumulate year after year, with little seasonal melt to reset the landscape. The frozen world becomes harsh, stark, and unyielding, yet also mesmerizing in its crystalline beauty. Mountains sparkle with ice, rivers appear as silver threads, and clouds reflect the sun's weak rays, creating dazzling light displays that are both dangerous and hypnotic. For humans, the frozen sun dictates daily life. Activities must be carefully timed to make the most of daylight, whether hunting, fishing, or gathering sparse vegetation. Long hours of dim light demand acute awareness and careful planning. Eyes evolve to cope with glare, and the human brain develops strong spatial and temporal awareness to interpret subtle shifts in light, guiding movement across frozen plains. Survival depends on reading these changes accurately, understanding the interplay of sun, snow, and ice. Animals, too, adapt to this pale sun. Predators hunt with precision, relying on minimal light to stalk prey. Prey species have evolved acute vision to detect even faint shadows moving across the ice. Migration patterns are timed with the sun's movement, triggering instincts to move toward areas of slightly better illumination or warmth. Life in this world is a constant negotiation with light, with every creature learning to interpret, anticipate, and exploit the limited presence of the sun. The frozen sun also shapes human culture and myth. Its rarity and weakness inspire stories, rituals, and reverence. Early humans might treat sunrise as a sacred event, tracking it with elaborate markers or aligning structures to its path. Seasonal festivals could celebrate the few moments when sunlight is most abundant. The aurora borealis and other atmospheric phenomena would intertwine with solar patterns, blending science, survival, and spirituality into an inseparable cultural framework. Every reflection, shimmer, or color in the sky becomes a sign, a guide, and sometimes a warning. Weather patterns are influenced heavily by the sun's weakness. Storms gain power over frozen landscapes that cannot absorb heat. Winds whip unbroken plains with icy fury, and blizzards can persist for days, driven by temperature extremes and snow reflection. Even minor changes in the sun's angle can shift weather systems, creating temporary thawing in one valley, while neighboring plains remain locked in ice. Humans and animals alike develop acute weather prediction skills, reading the sky and snow like a map of survival. Seasonal and diurnal cycles become extreme. Days and nights stretch differently across latitudes, with some regions experiencing near-perpetual twilight, while others endure long periods of darkness. This affects sleeping patterns, hunting schedules, and migration timing. Plants, where they survive, evolve to optimize photosynthesis in weak light, while animals adjust activity to exploit periods when light is just sufficient for feeding or travel. Life in this frozen world is governed by the sun's faint rhythm, rather than warmth or abundance. The interplay of sunlight and ice creates breathtaking landscapes. Glaciers sparkle with tiny embedded minerals. Frozen lakes reflect every cloud and shadow. And mountains of ice catch the minimal rays in a spectrum of blues and whites. Humans and animals move through these landscapes with reverence and caution, navigating both their beauty and their danger. Crevasses hidden in snow, thin ice over lakes, and shifting glaciers form constant threats, reminding all life that survival demands attention to every glimmer of light. Imagine standing on a ridge, wind cutting across your face, snow crunching beneath your feet. Above, the weak sun casts a pale glow, and below, ice stretches endlessly, glittering in fractured light. Life moves cautiously across the frozen plains, humans tracking prey, animals seeking shelter, birds gliding low over frozen rivers. Every being interprets the faint presence of the sun, using it to make decisions that ensure survival. The sky itself is a guide, a challenge, and a mirror of life in a world that has never known warmth. In this frozen world, the sun is both a friend and a distant observer, its light shaping evolution, behavior, and culture. Every shadow, every faint ray, every reflection becomes critical information. Humans develop intelligence, skill, and adaptability in constant conversation with this pale sun, reading its movement and responding with creativity, caution, and endurance. Life evolves in lockstep with the frozen sky, a planet illuminated by a sun that is never strong enough to melt the ice, but powerful enough to govern existence in subtle, persistent ways. In a world where the ice age never ends, the very concept of agriculture would be radically different from anything we know today. Traditional fields of wheat, corn, and rice could never survive under layers of frost and snow, and fertile valleys would be scarce and scattered. Humans would have to innovate, crafting food systems that can endure perpetual cold. Imagine small, sheltered gardens built near geothermal vents or volcanic soils, where heat seeps from the earth itself to nourish hardy plants. These spaces would be precious sanctuaries, carefully tended and fiercely protected against the elements. Humans might develop vertical farming long before modern technology, using stacked layers of soil or hydroponic systems powered by heat from fires, hot springs, or magma. Plants grown in these systems would be specially selected or genetically favored for cold tolerance, rapid growth, and high nutritional content. Root vegetables, cold-resistant grains, and certain hardy legumes would dominate the menu, while leaves, shoots, and even edible mosses could supplement diets. Knowledge of plant biology would be crucial, turning cultivation into a science deeply intertwined with survival. Animal husbandry would evolve dramatically under ice. Large herbivores like mammoths, bison, or reindeer would be domesticated and bred for food, labor, and warmth. Their meat would provide essential calories, while hides and fur would insulate shelters and clothing. Milk from domesticated cold-adapted animals might be a key nutritional source, processed into cheese or other preserved forms. Communities would become adept at storing, fermenting, and drying foods, creating caches that could sustain them through storms and extended periods of limited hunting. Fishing and foraging would take on new significance. Frozen rivers, lakes, and coastal waters would offer abundant opportunities for survival, but only to those skilled enough to exploit them safely. Ice fishing through narrow cracks, navigating treacherous frozen waters, and knowing the seasonal behaviors of fish would become essential expertise. Foraging might include digging through snow and ice for buried tubers, collecting lichens or moss, or gathering nuts and berries from resilient shrubs. Each edible resource would be valued as much for its energy content as for its rarity, and humans would develop sophisticated techniques to extract every possible calorie. Preservation would be the cornerstone of food strategy. Smoking, drying, freezing, and fermenting would be routine practices. Ice itself could be used as a natural refrigeration system, storing meat, fish, and other perishables for months. Knowledge of how to prevent spoilage in freezing conditions would be essential, with entire communities specializing in food storage techniques. Recipes might be simple, functional, and repetitive, but they would ensure survival, turning the harshest winters into opportunities to demonstrate ingenuity. Trade networks could emerge around food scarcity. Communities with access to fertile geothermal valleys might trade preserved foods, seeds, or rare spices with distant settlements. Sled routes, ice channels, and partially frozen rivers would act as highways for these exchanges. Humans would develop a deep understanding of geography and seasonal patterns, planning complex journeys to acquire the essential resources they cannot produce locally. Food becomes not just sustenance, but a driver of exploration, cooperation, and innovation. Hunting would remain central to survival, but strategies would evolve for the harsh environment. Predators would be formidable, and prey species would be tough, adapted to cold and capable of traversing frozen landscapes. Humans would need coordinated group hunting strategies, creating snares, driving herds across ice, or ambushing them near frozen rivers. Every hunt would require patience, intelligence, and careful planning, with failure carrying the risk of starvation. Knowledge of animal behavior would be as crucial as the tools themselves. Fungi and microbial life would also play an essential role. Mushrooms, yeast, and other microorganisms could be harvested and cultivated in small, insulated shelters, providing flavor, nutrients, and essential biochemical processes for fermentation. These tiny life forms would become invaluable allies, transforming simple root vegetables into more complex, nourishing meals and enabling communities to maximize limited resources. Even in frozen isolation, life finds ways to sustain itself through subtle partnerships and careful observation. Humans would adapt their eating habits to survive constant cold. Meals would be high in protein and fat, dense with calories to sustain body heat. Fasting periods might be unavoidable during extreme storms or migration, leading to physiological and metabolic adaptations over generations. Communities would value every scrap of food, leaving nothing to waste. Shared meals would reinforce social bonds, teach survival skills, and provide psychological comfort in an otherwise harsh and unyielding world. Even with ingenuity, survival would remain precarious. Ice could cover food caches, storms could destroy crops, and predators might raid stores. Humans would develop emergency strategies, hidden reserves, and contingency plans to ensure survival. Every action from planting to harvesting, storing to distributing would be guided by necessity, but also creativity, fostering a level of resourcefulness and intelligence rarely seen in temperate climates. Life under an eternal ice age would be a constant negotiation with scarcity, a dance with frost, and a testament to human adaptability. In a world where the ice age never ends, human survival depends entirely on creativity, invention, and resourcefulness. Every tool, shelter, and method of transport would need to withstand extreme cold, relentless snow, and the pressures of a planet locked in ice. Technology would evolve out of necessity, driven not by curiosity alone, but by the urgent need to endure, hunt, and thrive. Imagine humans discovering that the simplest innovations, an insulated coat, a reinforced sled, or a sharpened spear, could mean the difference between life and death, and then building entire systems of ingenuity from that starting point. Shelter would be the cornerstone of technological innovation. Humans might construct homes partially or entirely within the ice itself, carving walls and chambers directly from glaciers or permafrost. These ice structures would be surprisingly resilient, their interiors insulated from wind and blizzards. Fire pits would be strategically placed, with ventilation systems engineered to circulate heat while minimizing smoke exposure. Some communities could even harness geothermal vents or volcanic heat to maintain stable temperatures within their dwellings, creating warm pockets of civilization in an otherwise frozen wasteland. Clothing technology would reach levels of sophistication unseen in warmer climates. Layers of fur, hide, and woven fibers would be stitched, tied, and layered for maximum warmth. Humans would experiment with waterproofing techniques, developing early sealants from animal fats or resins to protect against wind and wet snow. Footwear would be insulated with moss, fur, or layered leather, enabling long-distance travel across icy plains. Accessories like gloves, hoods, and goggles would protect from frostbite and snow blindness, demonstrating a deep understanding of both environment and human physiology. Transportation would require equal ingenuity. Sleds pulled by domesticated animals, mammoths, or even human teams would become the lifelines connecting distant communities. Roads and ice channels would be carefully mapped, marked with cairns or other subtle indicators to guide travelers through treacherous landscapes. In some regions, humans might develop early skis or snowshoes, extending mobility across frozen tundras and frozen riverbeds. Every movement would be meticulously planned, blending knowledge of geography, weather, and animal behavior into practical solutions for survival. Hunting technology would be highly specialized. Spears, arrows, and traps would be designed for cold, maximizing both efficiency and durability. Ice-adapted fishing techniques would emerge, including specialized hooks, nets, and ice fishing holes strategically placed in frozen lakes or rivers. Humans would observe animal behavior meticulously, creating lures and ambush methods to overcome the challenges posed by both predators and prey in the frozen world. Knowledge of animal migration, wind patterns, and snow conditions would be encoded into the design of each tool. Food preservation would be a technological challenge as well. Freezing itself could be exploited, with ice cellars acting as natural refrigerators for meat, fish, and other perishables. Smoking and drying techniques would be refined to maximize storage life, while fermentation could transform basic ingredients into complex, nutrient-rich foods. Humans would develop containers, coverings, and storage systems designed specifically to protect food from extreme cold. Scavengers and ice shifts, turning simple resources into reliable sustenance. Communication technology would also evolve in response to isolation and distance. Signal fires, reflective surfaces, and even rudimentary flags or markers could transmit information across frozen plains. Communities might develop coded messages using sound, light, or symbols etched into ice or stone. Oral tradition would complement these systems, with storytelling, songs, and chants encoding critical survival knowledge. Every form of communication would be functional, efficient, and tailored to a world where visibility is limited and mobility is challenging. Energy and power solutions would be inventive. Fire remains the primary source of heat, but methods for efficiently igniting and sustaining flames would become critical. Torches, oil lamps, and insulated hearths could be engineered to burn longer and resist wind and snow. Humans might also experiment with early forms of mechanical advantage, such as sled winches, lever systems, or pulley setups, to move heavy ice blocks, hunt large animals, or construct shelters. Ingenuity would permeate every aspect of life, turning basic physics into practical solutions. Art and culture would blend seamlessly with technology. Tools, clothing, and shelters would often be decorated, engraved, or patterned, serving both functional and symbolic purposes. Carvings on sleds or buildings might mark ownership, commemorate hunts, or encode knowledge for future generations. Even practical objects would carry stories, connecting survival to identity and community. Humans would not only endure in this frozen world, they would create beauty alongside innovation. In this eternal ice age, technology becomes a testament to human adaptability. Survival is inseparable from invention, and every innovation represents countless hours of observation, trial, and ingenuity. Life is a constant interplay between environmental challenges and human creativity, with technology evolving as both a shield and a tool to master the frozen world. Tools, shelters, clothing, and transportation systems are not luxuries. They are the architecture of existence, carefully honed to withstand ice, snow, and the relentless demands of a planet that never warms. In a world where the ice age never ended, the rhythm of human life would be defined by movement. Fixed settlements would be rare and limited to the most favorable microclimates, such as geothermal valleys or volcanic slopes. And for the majority of people, survival would mean constant adaptation and migration. Entire communities would move with the seasons, following the faint pulses of life across frozen landscapes, tracking animal herds, ice-free waterways, and pockets of vegetation that are ephemeral in an eternally frozen world. Nomadic strategies would evolve into highly organized systems of survival. Families and clans would travel in coordinated groups, establishing temporary camps that can be dismantled and reconstructed with speed and efficiency. Shelters would be modular, designed for mobility, using lightweight frames covered with furs, skins, and ice-reinforced layers to protect against relentless wind and snow. Each member of a traveling group would have a clear role: hunters to track prey, gatherers to find edible plants and fungi, scouts to navigate treacherous terrain, and elders to advise on survival strategies and cultural rituals. Routes would be carefully mapped and memorized, passed down through oral tradition, stories and symbolic markers etched into rocks or carved into ice. Trails would follow the migrations of mammoths, reindeer, and other megafauna, intersecting frozen rivers and valleys in a delicate balance between opportunity and danger. Humans would develop an intimate knowledge of snow patterns, ice thickness, wind direction, and weather signals, all critical to predicting safe passages and avoiding fatal hazards. Every journey would be a blend of instinct, observation, and communal intelligence. Transportation techniques would become sophisticated in response to the frozen environment. Sleds, drawn by dogs, domesticated mammoths, or human teams, would be engineered for endurance and speed over ice and snow. Snowshoes or skis would allow individuals to traverse deep snow efficiently. while ice channels could serve as temporary highways for travel and trade. Migration would not only be about survival, but also about maintaining social connections, exchanging resources, and sharing knowledge across distant and isolated communities. Food acquisition would dictate migration patterns. Hunters would follow herds, predicting their movements with astonishing precision, while foragers would track seasonal growths of moss, lichens, and hardy shrubs. Ice fishing techniques would shift with the seasons and ice thickness, requiring flexibility and ingenuity. Communities would develop caches of preserved food, buried under snow or hidden in ice cellars, to sustain them during treacherous stretches of travel. Planning each leg of a migration would be a meticulous process, balancing caloric expenditure, safety, and resource availability. Human culture and social structures would evolve in response to nomadic life. Kinship, cooperation, and shared responsibility would become essential, and knowledge would be a prized commodity, held collectively to ensure group survival. Elders would transmit wisdom on hunting, weather, navigation, and emergency responses, while younger members would learn through hands-on experience. Festivals, rituals, and storytelling would occur during moments of stability, reinforcing group cohesion and passing on crucial survival strategies embedded in culture. Nomadic life would also shape human innovation. Portable technologies, adaptable clothing, and efficient hunting tools would emerge as essential assets. Humans might develop sled winches, ice drills, collapsible shelters, and lightweight cooking implements to maximize survival efficiency. Even clothing would be multifunctional, layered for warmth, waterproofing, and mobility, incorporating insights from generations of living intimately with the frozen landscape. Resourcefulness would not be optional. It would be a defining trait of survival. Encounters with predators and rival groups would influence migration routes. Saber-toothed cats, giant wolves, and other Ice Age predators would roam near the same resources humans rely on, requiring vigilance, coordinated defense, and strategic movement. Conflicts over limited resources with other human groups would also dictate patterns, prompting alliances, negotiations, or diversionary routes. Knowledge of the landscape, predator behavior, and human competitors would be integrated into every decision, making navigation a complex interplay of ecology and society. The environment itself would dictate not just where humans travel, but when. Seasonal shifts, storm patterns, snow accumulation, and ice thickness would determine the timing and duration of migrations. Some migrations might follow sunlight, seeking regions with maximum daylight for hunting and plant growth, while others would track heat sources such as geothermal vents or volcanic regions. Life in this frozen world would be a constant negotiation with the elements, every movement a calculated effort to remain one step ahead of nature's extremes. Imagine a caravan moving across a frozen valley. Sleds laden with supplies glide over thick ice. Dogs bark and pull in synchronized rhythm. Humans bundled in furs scan the horizon for herds and hazards. Children follow the trails of elders, learning paths that have been traveled for generations. Smoke curls from small portable fires, scenting the icy air with warmth and sustenance. Each day is a delicate dance of observation, endurance, and cooperation, and the survival of the group hinges on mastering the frozen world around them. As darkness falls over a world where the Ice Age never ends, the night takes on a strange and formidable character. The sun, already weak and distant, dips below the horizon early in many regions, leaving hours of twilight that quickly fade into deep, biting darkness. Snowfields, ice plains, and frozen forests are swallowed by a cold so absolute it seems almost physical, pressing against every surface, every breath, and every living creature. In this frozen world, night is not simply the absence of light. It is a force that shapes survival, behavior, and even imagination. Humans must navigate this darkness with extraordinary skill. Vision becomes adapted to low light, with eyes sensitive to the faintest glimmers reflecting off ice and snow. Campfires become more than warmth, they are essential beacons, creating temporary zones of life and safety. Shadows cast by flickering flames dance across ice walls, and every movement outside the light becomes a potential threat. Families and clans huddle near these fires, sharing warmth, stories, and knowledge, the flames acting as a bridge between survival and the unknown beyond. Night hunting and travel require acute awareness. Predators of the frozen world are skilled at exploiting darkness. Giant wolves, saber-toothed cats, and other megafauna move silently across ice plains, tracking prey with senses honed for low light. Humans must adapt by developing stealth, listening for subtle cues, and observing faint traces in snow. Moonlight and starlight become essential guides, and knowledge of celestial patterns is woven into navigation techniques. Even the slightest misstep can have consequences, making night an ongoing lesson in vigilance and precision. The frozen night sky is both beautiful and intimidating. Stars sparkle more intensely in the crisp, clear air, reflecting off ice and snow, to create dazzling illusions of movement. The aurora borealis dances across the heavens, painting waves of green, purple, and red that flicker across glaciers and frozen lakes. These lights serve as guides, inspiration, and in some cases, warnings of geomagnetic storms or changes in weather patterns. Humans would weave these celestial phenomena into their myths, calendars, and rituals, connecting survival with observation of the cosmos. Night temperatures plummet far below what is survivable without careful preparation. Insulating shelters, layered clothing, and fire management are critical to prevent frostbite or hypothermia. Humans may burrow partially into snowbanks, ice caves, or temporary shelters, using ingenious insulation methods such as layers of moss, animal hides, or compacted snow walls. Even the arrangement of bodies around fires or heat sources is a strategic decision, maximizing warmth and minimizing exposure to the frozen night. Predators adapt to this darkness as well. Nocturnal hunting becomes a norm, and some species exploit the frozen night to ambush prey or scavenge abandoned kills. Humans, in turn, develop strategies to counter these threats, including sentinel systems, traps around camps, and coordinated group movements. Awareness of animal behavior in low light is essential, and knowledge passed down through generations ensures that humans can anticipate dangers invisible to the untrained eye. The psychological impact of the frozen night is significant. Endless darkness can be disorienting, heightening stress and fear. Stories, songs, and oral traditions become coping mechanisms, offering guidance and continuity through long nights. Rituals may evolve around the sun's return, or the phases of the moon, grounding human life in cycles of light and shadow. Art and symbolism flourish in these conditions, with ice walls, snowdrifts, and firelight serving as canvases for expression and communication. Navigation at night requires specialized skills. Travelers rely on stars, auroras, ice reflections, and landmarks carefully memorized during daylight. Snow and ice themselves offer subtle clues, textures, colors, and shapes reveal hazards or safe paths. Even small environmental details, like the crunch of snow or the orientation of frost patterns, can guide movement. Knowledge of these indicators is vital for hunting, migration, and avoiding predatory animals or dangerous terrain. The frozen night also affects ecosystems. Many animals change their activity patterns, with prey species taking refuge in crevices, burrows, or under ice, and predators adjusting hunting strategies to exploit cover and darkness. Marine life beneath ice may continue feeding and moving, largely unaffected by surface darkness, but surface-dependent species must navigate both cold and night. Humans, as apex observers, learn to interpret these nocturnal patterns, integrating environmental awareness into daily survival. Imagine standing on a ridge under a frozen sky. The air is sharp and still, stars piercing through the night like needles of light. A distant aurora shimmers, reflecting off glaciers and ice plains, while below, the frozen landscape seems alive with unseen movement. Hunters track prey through the pale glimmer. Families cluster around fires, and the faint crunch of snow signals the presence of other creatures. Every sense is heightened. Every shadow carries meaning, and survival depends on mastering both the cold and the darkness. In this eternal ice age, night is an ever-present companion, shaping life, technology, culture, and instinct. Humans learn to navigate, survive, and even thrive under these frozen skies, turning darkness from a threat into a guide, and creating a deep, intimate connection with the environment that defines every moment of existence. In a world where the ice age never ends, rivers and lakes are transformed into shimmering, glass-like highways, frozen solid for much of the year. These bodies of water, once teeming with life in warmer climates, become both obstacles and vital resources for humans and animals alike. Ice can stretch for miles, hiding currents beneath, creating dangers for the unwary, yet also offering new pathways for travel and trade. Humans develop a nuanced understanding of these frozen waterways, learning to read ice thickness, patterns, and hidden dangers with astonishing precision. Rivers that once flowed freely now become dynamic surfaces, with cracks, pressure ridges, and ice caves forming as water continues to move beneath the frozen shell. Every frozen river presents hazards. Thin ice that can collapse under weight, concealed whirlpools and hidden currents that erode the ice from below. Humans must adapt their travel and hunting methods, probing surfaces with poles, testing the ice carefully, and creating sled routes that avoid weak areas. Even the sound of cracking ice becomes a language, signaling safety or danger. Frozen lakes act as both highways and hunting grounds. Ice fishing techniques become vital, with holes drilled through thick ice to reach fish trapped beneath. Communities develop strategies to sustain themselves from these frozen waters, learning the habits of aquatic species and adapting tools to catch them efficiently. Nets, hooks, and traps are designed to endure ice and cold, and storage techniques preserve the catch for weeks or months. Water sources themselves are carefully managed, as accessing liquid water under frozen surfaces can be as critical as food itself. Humans often rely on frozen rivers and lakes as transportation corridors. Sleds, drawn by animals or humans, glide over ice with relative ease compared to snow-covered plains. Trade and communication between distant communities are facilitated by these natural highways, allowing resources, knowledge, and culture to move across otherwise impassable terrain. Routes are carefully memorized and marked, with natural features such as ice ridges or frozen islands serving as guideposts. Travelers become intimately familiar with seasonal changes in ice conditions, timing journeys to coincide with maximum safety. The ice itself is a resource. Humans might carve blocks for construction, create insulated shelters from thick ice sheets, or use ice as a medium for art and symbolic markings. Tools are adapted to scrape, cut, and manipulate frozen surfaces, demonstrating innovation born from necessity. Even fire and heating techniques are integrated into ice management, melting controlled sections for water, trapping animals, or creating temporary channels. Ice becomes both an ally and a challenge, shaping daily life in a frozen world. Aquatic life beneath the frozen surface continues, hidden from human eyes. Fish, crustaceans, and other species survive in cold, oxygenated water, creating pockets of life that sustain predators above and below the ice. Humans learn to detect these hidden ecosystems, reading subtle signs on the ice, such as patterns of snow accumulation, ripples, or occasional breaks that signal active life below. Understanding these frozen waters is a form of science and survival, a blend of observation, intuition, and experience passed through generations. Rivers and lakes also affect local weather patterns. Frozen surfaces reflect sunlight, creating dazzling glare during rare bright periods, while also contributing to wind patterns that shape snowfall and blizzards. Microclimates develop around large bodies of ice, with slight variations in temperature, wind, and humidity affecting human settlement, hunting, and migration. Humans learn to use these patterns, predicting storms, locating ice-safe passages, and timing their movements to exploit favorable conditions. Hazards abound in these frozen environments. Ice can crack unexpectedly, creating chasms and pitfalls. Avalanches may cascade from nearby cliffs onto ice-covered rivers, while strong winds can sweep across exposed frozen lakes with lethal force. Humans develop safety strategies, including travel in groups, marking hazards, and using tools to test the stability of ice. Awareness and preparation are essential, and knowledge of these dangers is embedded in both oral traditions and practical training from a young age. The interaction between frozen waterways and surrounding ecosystems is profound. Animals, both predator and prey, migrate along ice corridors, making frozen rivers and lakes critical lifelines. Humans track these movements carefully, observing footprints, ice breaks, and other subtle indicators to anticipate the presence of large herbivores, predators, or smaller game. Hunting strategies are adapted to the frozen environment, exploiting ice edges, holes, and cracks where animals gather for water or shelter. Imagine standing on a frozen lake, wind howling across a smooth, icy expanse. The horizon stretches endlessly, glinting in pale light, while the ice beneath holds hidden currents and life. Travelers tread cautiously, testing each step, while hunters scan for signs of fish beneath the opaque surface. Snowdrifts curl across ice ridges, and distant predators move silently, exploiting the frozen pathways. Every action, walking, hunting, fishing, or navigating, requires intimate knowledge of the ice and respect for the power it holds. In this eternal ice age, frozen rivers and lakes are more than just water, they are lifelines, highways, hunting grounds, and sources of danger. Humans and animals alike adapt to their presence, reading subtle signs, crafting specialized tools, and moving with care and precision. These frozen waterways shape every aspect of life, dictating travel, settlement, hunting, and survival in a world that never thaws. In a world where the ice age never ended, extreme weather dominates the landscape. Snowfalls can last for weeks, covering plains, valleys, and forests in thick, unbroken layers of ice. Blizzards whip across open expanses with ferocious intensity, driven by winds that slice through clothing and flesh alike. Ice storms strike with suddenness and unpredictability, encasing trees, rocks, and dwellings in thick layers of solid crystal. These storms are not merely inconveniences, they are forces that define the rhythm of life, dictating when humans can travel, hunt, or forage. Ice storms are both beautiful and deadly. They glaze every surface in sparkling layers of frost that refract light into dazzling patterns, creating surreal landscapes that seem almost otherworldly. But these same storms can snap branches, collapse shelters, and immobilize both humans and animals. Travelers caught on exposed ice plains or frozen lakes must be wary, as the very ground beneath their feet may shift or fracture under the weight of accumulating ice. Survival depends on reading subtle environmental cues, changes in wind, temperature drops, and the smell of approaching snow. Blizzards are among the most formidable challenges. Visibility drops to near zero, and the temperature plummets dramatically, often bringing the risk of hypothermia in mere minutes. Humans would develop techniques for enduring these storms, such as creating snow trenches, temporary windbreaks, or insulated shelters. Traveling groups would have strict protocols, moving slowly, using ropes to stay connected, and sending scouts ahead to detect safer terrain. Every blizzard becomes a test of endurance, decision-making, and knowledge accumulated over generations. Extreme weather shapes ecosystems in profound ways. Animals must adapt to sudden changes in temperature, heavy snowfall, and ice accumulation. Prey species seek shelter in caves, dense vegetation, or under snow, while predators develop tracking and ambushing strategies that exploit the ice and snow. Humans observe these adaptations carefully, learning where to hunt, when to travel, and how to anticipate animal movements in the midst of volatile conditions. Survival requires not only preparation but also keen observation of nature's signals. Ice accumulation during storms can alter landscapes overnight. Rivers may freeze solid, lakes can expand with ice shelves, and snowdrifts create new barriers and pathways. Humans adapt by marking routes, creating temporary bridges, and using sleds or skis to traverse difficult terrain. They might even use storms strategically, hiding from predators or moving along wind-protected corridors. Knowledge of snowpack, ice strength, and drift patterns becomes essential, turning extreme weather into both a threat and a tool for survival. Wind plays a critical role in shaping extreme weather. Gale-force gusts whip across open plains, driving snow into near-impenetrable walls and creating ice ridges. Humans learn to construct windbreaks from ice, rock, or packed snow, and shelters are oriented to minimize exposure. Clothing is layered and reinforced, protecting against frostbite and snow blindness, while fires are shielded from wind to ensure warmth during long, dark nights. Even small innovations in wind management can mean life or death. Ice storms influence human innovation and community practices. Portable shelters, insulated clothing, and heat-retaining fires are refined to withstand the heaviest icing. Groups develop emergency signals and routines for sheltering in place during storms, with specific roles assigned for food, warmth, and lookout duties. Children learn these routines early, understanding the rhythm of extreme weather and the necessity of collective effort. Knowledge becomes as critical as strength, with preparation a matter of survival. These storms also affect travel and migration. Routes that are passable one day may become impassable after hours of snowfall or ice accumulation. Humans learn to anticipate storm patterns, timing journeys to avoid the deadliest conditions. Navigation relies on memory, celestial cues, and subtle signs in the ice and snow. Blizzards can force groups to stop, dig in, and wait out days or weeks, testing endurance, resourcefulness, and group cohesion. Ice storms create hazards in hunting and food acquisition. Animals may be trapped or forced into open areas, presenting opportunities but also increasing risk from predators. Ice can encase water sources, complicating fishing or access to drinking water. Humans develop tools and techniques for breaking ice safely, creating channels, and harvesting food despite frozen conditions. Observation of animal behavior, ice thickness, and environmental cues inform strategies, and adaptation becomes a constant process. Imagine a frozen plateau in the grip of a fierce ice storm. Snow swirls in blinding sheets. Trees bend under the weight of crystallized ice, and the air is sharp and biting. A group huddles behind a packed snow wall, sleds loaded with essential supplies, fires struggling against the wind. Hunters scan for movement, listening for faint sounds under the roar of the storm. Every step, every breath, every decision is a delicate negotiation with the frozen elements. Life in this eternal ice age is a constant dialogue with extreme weather. The mastery of ice storms is essential for survival. In a world where the ice age never ended, predators dominate the frozen landscapes, shaping ecosystems and human survival strategies alike. From massive saber-toothed cats prowling snow-laden forests to packs of giant wolves stalking icy plains, the predator-prey dynamic is more intense, more desperate, and more intricate than ever. These creatures are perfectly adapted to extreme cold. Their fur, fat, and hunting strategies, allowing them to thrive in conditions that would cripple less specialized animals. Humans, in turn, must develop keen observation, ingenuity, and cooperation to coexist with these apex hunters. The saber-toothed cat is an iconic predator of the frozen world. With enormous canines designed to pierce through thick hides, it relies on stealth, power, and precision rather than endurance. Tracking prey through snow and ice, saber-tooths ambush herbivores weakened by snowdrifts, frozen rivers, or scarcity of food. Humans observing their hunting techniques would learn invaluable lessons in patience, timing, and understanding animal behavior. Clues left in snow, such as paw prints or disturbed terrain, become a form of communication and survival knowledge passed down through generations. Wolves and wolf packs dominate in open plains and tundra regions. Their strength lies in cooperation, stamina, and adaptability. Packs coordinate attacks on large herbivores, using strategy and numbers to overcome obstacles that single predators cannot. Humans encounter these predators frequently, leading to both conflict and adaptation. Early warning systems, coordinated defense strategies, and clever diversion techniques emerge from the necessity of avoiding pack attacks while still hunting or traveling. Wolves, while deadly, also shape migration patterns, forcing humans and prey alike to navigate frozen terrain with heightened awareness. Other predators fill specialized niches. Giant eagles, scavenging birds, and icy-coated felines patrol cliffs and treetops, preying on smaller animals or taking advantage of vulnerable creatures trapped in snow or ice. Each species develops unique adaptations: keen eyesight in low light, silent flight over frozen forests, or reinforced claws to break through ice layers. Humans become students of these adaptations, using observation to anticipate danger, mimic strategies, or exploit predator behaviors to locate prey or avoid conflicts. Predators influence human technology and culture. Tools, weapons, and traps are often designed to counter these threats. Snares, spears, and bows are refined to ensure efficiency and safety when hunting near predator territories. Humans also learn to protect their communities with defensive structures, including watchposts, barriers, and fire placements. The constant presence of predators sharpens human senses, awareness, and strategic thinking, making survival a game of observation, timing, and adaptation. Nocturnal predators bring additional challenges. Creatures that hunt under the cover of darkness: giant owls, saber-tooths adapted for low light, and stealthy wolves require humans to be constantly vigilant, even at night. Fires, signal systems, and rotating watch shifts become standard practices for camps and temporary settlements. The frozen night magnifies danger, and humans integrate predator behavior into every aspect of night survival, from positioning shelters to scheduling movement and hunting. Predator-prey relationships also shape ecosystems. The movements of herbivores are heavily influenced by predator behavior, which in turn affects plant distribution, river crossings, and migration patterns. Humans learn to read these cues, tracking both prey and predator to find safe passages and hunting opportunities. Ice and snow make these relationships more visible. Footprints, broken ice, and snowdrifts reveal the presence, size, and speed of predators, creating a living map of danger and opportunity. The intelligence of predators is evident. Wolves communicate with signals, vocalizations, and coordinated movement. Saber-toothed rely on strategy, timing, and observation of herd behavior. Humans observe these tactics and may adopt similar cooperative strategies for hunting, navigation, and defense. Knowledge of predator intelligence becomes a survival tool, transforming encounters with apex hunters into lessons in strategy, awareness, and adaptability. Predators also influence human psychology and culture. Tales of hunts, near escapes, and encounters with massive cats or wolves are embedded in stories, songs, and rituals. These narratives serve both practical and cultural functions, passing on survival strategies, reinforcing social cohesion, and instilling respect and fear for the natural world. Predator encounters teach caution, creativity, and reverence, shaping not only behavior but the very fabric of human community. Imagine walking across a frozen tundra, the wind biting at your face, snow crunching underfoot, when suddenly, a set of massive paw prints appears in front of you. You sense the presence of a saber-tooth nearby, its movements deliberate, calculated. A pack of wolves howls in the distance, their calls echoing across ice plains. Every decision whether to move, hide, or signal is critical. Humans in this world survive not just with tools and fire, but with knowledge, vigilance, and understanding of the predators that share the frozen landscape. In this eternal ice age, predators are not merely threats, they are teachers, shaping human ingenuity, movement, and perception. Life in the frozen world is a constant interplay of pursuit and avoidance, observation and adaptation, where humans must learn the rules of survival dictated by the apex hunters that dominate every snow-covered mile. In a world where the ice age never ended, night brings more than darkness. It brings terror, uncertainty, and a profound awareness of the fragility of life. The frozen landscape transforms into a realm of subtle threats, where every shadow, sound, and movement can signal danger. Humans must navigate nights that stretch for long hours in deep cold, guided by instinct, fire, and the faintest glimmers of moonlight or stars reflecting off ice. These frozen nights are a crucible, shaping endurance, courage, and ingenuity. The cold itself becomes a living adversary. Temperature drops during the long night can be severe, turning breath into clouds of frost and frostbite, into a very real danger. Shelters provide only temporary reprieve, as snowdrifts and ice accumulation can crush makeshift dwellings or block exits. Humans develop techniques for insulation using animal hides, layered furs, and snow-packed walls. Fires are carefully tended, with embers preserved through meticulous arrangements and constant vigilance, forming lifelines against the overwhelming chill. Nighttime predators amplify the threat. Wolves, saber-tooths, and other creatures of the dark exploit limited visibility and frozen terrain to stalk prey. Humans must remain alert, listening for the faintest noises, the crack of ice, the rustle of snow, or distant howls. Even minor errors in judgment can be fatal, forcing communities to develop watches, sentinel systems, and coordinated responses. Survival depends on reading environmental cues and predicting predator behavior. An intricate dance of observation and instinct honed over generations. Storms during the night intensify the nightmare. Blizzards can descend without warning, reducing visibility to near zero and masking the approach of predators. Snow accumulates rapidly, burying tracks and pathways, while wind-driven ice can slice exposed skin and freeze fires out. Humans respond with improvisation, creating windbreaks, snow trenches, and temporary ice shelters. They learn to navigate through storm conditions, using sound, scent, and memory to follow safe routes across frozen plains. The frozen landscape itself seems alive with danger. Cracks in ice, hidden crevices, and unstable snow layers create constant risk. A seemingly solid surface may give way, plunging the unwary into icy water or deep snowdrifts. Humans develop techniques for testing ice thickness, marking hazards, and moving cautiously in hazardous zones. Knowledge of terrain becomes a critical tool for surviving nights filled with uncertainty. Nightmares of ice also include psychological challenges. Endless darkness and harsh conditions strain endurance, provoke fear, and test mental resilience. Communities use storytelling, rituals, and songs to maintain morale, transmit survival knowledge, and reinforce social cohesion. Elders share tales of past nights, teaching the young how to anticipate dangers, read the environment, and respond to unexpected threats. Culture becomes intertwined with survival, shaping both practical and spiritual life under frozen skies. Firelight offers both protection and perspective. Circles of warmth and illumination act as centers of life, with humans clustering close for warmth, cooking, and communication. The flicker of flames creates moving shadows across ice and snow, distorting the landscape and amplifying the sense of mystery and danger. Observation and vigilance around fire are constant. Humans scan the edges of light for movement, anticipating predators or environmental changes. Fires are maintained strategically, serving as lifelines in a world where darkness is formidable and unforgiving. Ice storms at night are particularly treacherous. Frozen rain and sleet can coat trails, hiding dangerous cracks or unstable snow. The sound of ice fracturing echoes eerily, masking the approach of predators or threatening avalanches. Humans learn to interpret these auditory cues, distinguishing between natural ice sounds and approaching danger, a skill crucial for survival during long frozen nights. Even within safe shelters, the night is demanding. Cold seeps into bedding, frost accumulates on walls, and the risk of suffocation from poorly ventilated fires is real. Communities adapt by designing shelters with ventilation systems, bedding layers, and insulation that mitigate risks. The night becomes a classroom, teaching humans patience, observation, and innovation. Every precaution taken reflects centuries of adaptation to a world where frozen nights are omnipresent. Imagine a vast ice plain under a moonless sky. The wind howls across jagged ridges, snowdrifts swirl, and distant howls echo in the darkness. Travelers huddle behind snow walls, embers glowing faintly as they peer into shadows for signs of danger. Wolves stalk silently nearby, and the weight of frozen night presses against every human sense. Movement is careful, calculated, and deliberate. Life is dictated by knowledge, instinct, and the relentless challenge of the frozen hours. In this eternal ice age, nights are more than a passage of time, they are survival tests, shaping perception, courage, and the bond between humans and their environment. Nightmares of ice are never just imagined. They are lived experiences that define every decision, every step, and every heartbeat in a world that never thaws. In a world where the ice age never ended, oceans are transformed into frozen expanses, unpredictable and teeming with both danger and life adapted to the cold. Sea ice stretches farther than it ever does today, creating vast frozen platforms that extend across previously navigable waters. Waves crash against jagged ice shelves, sometimes freezing almost instantly in the frigid air, while under the surface, marine life adapts in astonishing ways to the relentless cold. For humans, these oceans are simultaneously sources of sustenance, peril, and awe-inspiring beauty. The surface of Ice Age oceans is a mosaic of ice flows, frozen bays, and open water channels. Ice shifts, cracks, and collides, producing constant movement that shapes the coastline and creates treacherous passages. Humans navigating these frozen seascapes must understand ice behavior, how currents can push ice sheets together, where weak ice may break under weight, and how to locate open water for fishing, drinking, or transportation. Survival requires an intimate knowledge of both visible patterns and subtle environmental cues, such as temperature shifts, wind direction, and the sound of cracking ice. Marine life thrives beneath the ice in hidden ecosystems. Cold-tolerant fish, crustaceans, and plankton form the base of the food web, sustaining larger predators such as seals, sea lions, and enormous fish. Humans who live near the ice edge learn to interpret signs of underwater activity. The patterns of birds circling above, the movement of predators on the ice, or the occasional splash of a fish breaking the frozen surface. Techniques like ice fishing, trapping, and monitoring breathing holes in the ice become essential skills for survival. The ocean's frozen surface also creates new opportunities for travel and trade. Humans use ice floes as natural bridges, sledges to traverse frozen channels, and temporary platforms for hunting marine mammals. These frozen highways, however, are unpredictable and dangerous. Shifts in ice can open gaps or expose treacherous currents, making every journey a calculated risk. Travelers must combine observation, experience, and cautious experimentation to navigate safely across this frozen domain. Ice Age oceans are also shaped by dramatic weather. Gale-force winds sweep across frozen seas, driving snow and ice into towering drifts and waves that solidify in minutes. Storms can shatter ice shelves, creating jagged hazards and isolating communities or hunters on ice floes. Understanding wind patterns, barometric changes, and cloud formations becomes a crucial skill for predicting dangerous conditions. Humans develop specialized shelters, windbreaks, and signaling methods to survive storms that could otherwise claim lives in minutes. Predators in the frozen ocean are both awe-inspiring and deadly. Seals, large fish, and even marine reptiles are hunted by apex predators that exploit frozen edges or open channels. Ice edges become hunting grounds, where humans and predators alike anticipate the congregation of prey. Observing predator behavior is crucial. The way a polar wolf hunts seals, how birds signal openings in ice, or how fish react to subtle currents inform survival strategies. Humans adapt weapons, traps, and methods to take advantage of these opportunities safely. The cold also affects the physiology of marine creatures. Fish grow slower, their metabolism adjusts to frigid waters, and many develop antifreeze-like proteins in their blood. Predators must conserve energy, ambushing prey rather than pursuing it relentlessly. Humans studying these animals over generations gain insight into patterns of migration, breeding, and behavior, using that knowledge to harvest food efficiently, while avoiding conflict with more dangerous species. Tides and currents in an eternal ice age take on unusual patterns. With vast ice sheets covering continents, ocean circulation changes dramatically, affecting climate, weather, and the availability of resources. Humans adapt by understanding the timing of tidal shifts, safe areas for fishing, and regions where ice is thick enough to support weight. Knowledge of currents becomes a tool for planning long-distance travel, hunting, and resource collection, shaping both daily life and seasonal patterns. Frozen oceans create visual spectacles that blend danger with awe. Icebergs drift silently, their underwater masses hidden from view, while auroras reflect off icy waters and shimmering surfaces, painting landscapes in green, purple, and red hues. Humans experience both fear and fascination, learning to respect the power of these oceans while also finding inspiration and navigation cues in their beauty. Observation of color, reflection, and movement informs survival and nurtures early forms of culture and artistry. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ice age ocean. Jagged ice stretches as far as the eye can see, waves crashing and freezing instantly, while a polar wind cuts across the frozen surface. Predators move silently along ice edges, marine mammals surface through cracks, and distant auroras flicker overhead. Humans carefully navigate this environment, testing ice, reading currents, and watching for predators, all while balancing the need for food, water, and safe passage. Every step is an interaction with a living, breathing, frozen ecosystem that demands respect, knowledge, and courage. In this eternal ice age, oceans are not just bodies of water. They are frozen highways, hunting grounds, survival classrooms, and sources of endless wonder. Humans and animals alike adapt to the shifting ice, learning to read patterns, anticipate dangers, and extract sustenance from beneath the frozen surface. Life at the edge of these icy oceans is a delicate dance, where observation, ingenuity, and courage determine whether a community thrives or succumbs to the power of the frozen seas. In a world where the ice age never ended, plant life exists in a delicate, extraordinary balance, adapting to cold, snow, and the relentless march of glaciers. Vegetation is sparse in many regions, yet pockets of resilience emerge in surprising ways. Hardy mosses cling to rocks, lichens spread across frozen surfaces, and resilient shrubs and conifers find ways to survive in soil buried under meters of snow. Every patch of green is a triumph of adaptation, a story of survival against overwhelming odds. Trees that endure these conditions develop remarkable traits. Conifers dominate, their needles coated with waxy surfaces to prevent water loss, and their flexible branches bending rather than breaking under heavy snow. Forests become quiet, snow-laden corridors where animal life finds shelter, and humans discover food and firewood. The density and composition of these forests shift according to temperature, snow accumulation, and proximity to ice sheets, creating microclimates where life can persist even in extreme cold. Shrubs and small plants are equally ingenious. They grow low to the ground to avoid icy winds, forming compact mats that trap heat and resist frost. Roots penetrate deep beneath frozen soil to access moisture and nutrients, and some species enter prolonged dormancy, waiting decades for conditions to improve. Humans learn to identify edible roots, berries, and shoots, using these hardy plants as supplemental food sources, medicinal remedies, and materials for tools or insulation. Survival depends on knowledge of seasonal growth patterns, plant identification, and harvesting techniques adapted to frozen landscapes. Lichen and mosses dominate in exposed regions. They colonize rocks, ice edges, and barren ground, forming miniature ecosystems that sustain insects and small animals. Lichen is particularly important, providing winter fodder for herbivores, such as reindeer and mammoths. Humans observe these subtle patterns, tracking herbivore movements and using lichen-rich zones as indicators for hunting opportunities. Even the smallest plants become key components of survival strategies, linking flora, fauna, and human ingenuity in a frozen web of life. Plant life is also shaped by ice movement. Glaciers grind soil into fine particles, depositing fertile patches in valleys or along riverbanks. These areas, often called refugia, become concentrated oases where plants can flourish despite the surrounding frozen expanse. Humans quickly recognize the importance of these sites, returning seasonally to gather edible plants, harvest wood, and observe animal activity. Knowledge of microhabitats and seasonal plant availability becomes essential for survival. The frozen flora affects climate and weather as well. Snow-covered vegetation reflects sunlight, influencing local temperatures and wind patterns. Forests act as windbreaks, slowing blizzards and creating sheltered areas for both humans and animals. Vegetation also plays a role in preventing erosion, stabilizing soil along frozen rivers and lakes, and supporting the growth of herbivores that form the base of predator-prey dynamics. The presence, absence, and density of plant life shapes the very structure of Ice Age ecosystems. Humans develop deep knowledge of plant survival strategies. They understand frost-resistant species, the timing of growth cycles, and which plants provide the best food, fiber, or firewood. Tools and techniques are refined to harvest these resources efficiently without damaging long-term growth. This knowledge is passed down orally, through stories, songs, and hands-on training, creating cultural continuity intertwined with practical survival skills. Adaptations of flora are mirrored in human culture. Seasonal festivals, rituals, and survival strategies are informed by plant cycles, bloom patterns, and the availability of resources. Humans learn to anticipate snowmelt in microhabitats, recognize plant signals for approaching storms, and identify areas where wildfires or volcanic activity have enriched soil, producing temporary plant abundance. Every plant, from tiny mosses to sprawling conifers, tells a story about resilience, adaptation, and the interconnection of life in a frozen world. Even in extreme cold, some species demonstrate astonishing creativity. Alpine flowers emerge briefly during rare warm periods, producing seeds that can survive decades beneath snow. Berries store nutrients for birds, mammals, and humans alike. Roots and tubers lie dormant under ice, waiting for subtle environmental changes to trigger growth. Life persists in hidden, often overlooked forms, teaching humans the value of observation, patience, and respect for the subtle rhythms of nature. Imagine standing in a snow-laden forest, branches bending under the weight of ice, the ground covered with resilient mosses and frozen shrubs. Every step reveals tiny ecosystems, frozen in time yet teeming with life beneath the surface. Humans navigate this landscape carefully, gathering what they can, observing animal activity, and learning to live in harmony with plants that endure where most other life cannot. The frozen flora is not merely scenery. It is sustenance, protection, and a silent teacher in a world dominated by ice and snow. In a world where the Ice Age never ended, survival is not only a physical challenge but a mental one. Humans must contend with relentless cold, scarce resources, and constant threats from predators and extreme weather. Endurance, vigilance, and ingenuity are vital, but the most critical tool of all is the mind. How humans think, adapt, and respond in these frozen landscapes determines whether they thrive, merely survive, or perish. Fear is an omnipresent force, shaping decisions and behavior. Each howling wind, distant predator call, or crack in the ice triggers a cascade of instincts honed over generations. Humans learn to manage fear, channeling it into heightened awareness rather than paralysis. Observation skills sharpen under pressure, and attention to detail becomes a form of defense. Every sound, shadow, and movement is interpreted as a potential signal of danger, requiring both intuition and analysis. Group dynamics are essential to mental survival. Humans rely on cooperation, communication, and trust to endure prolonged periods of harsh conditions. Shared responsibilities keeping fires alive, scouting for food, watching for predators create interdependent communities where individual actions have collective consequences. These social structures are constantly reinforced through rituals, oral stories, and practical teachings, ensuring that knowledge and strategies for survival persist across generations. Resource scarcity amplifies psychological stress. Food, water, and shelter are never guaranteed, and humans must constantly weigh risk versus reward. Decisions about whether to move to new territories, hunt during dangerous storms, or store resources for future scarcity are never trivial. Mental resilience is built through experience, trial, and error, as humans learn to anticipate environmental changes and plan for both immediate and long-term survival. Isolation during the long frozen nights presents unique psychological challenges. Extended darkness, extreme cold, and the absence of nearby communities can lead to fatigue, disorientation, and despair. Humans develop coping strategies, From storytelling and ritualistic behaviors to creating small, manageable routines that provide structure in a chaotic world. Mental endurance becomes as vital as physical endurance, allowing humans to persist through long, silent, and frozen hours. Adaptation is not purely instinctive. It requires cognitive flexibility. Humans in this eternal ice age must experiment, innovate, and learn from failures to survive. Understanding animal behavior, ice patterns, snowdrift, and seasonal changes requires a constant feedback loop of observation, analysis, and adjustment. Cognitive skills like problem-solving, memory, and foresight are tested continuously, with mistakes sometimes proving fatal. Fear and motivation are closely intertwined. Humans harness anxiety about predators, starvation, or weather to drive action and learning. Motivation to protect family, secure food, or build shelter ensures that fear is a productive force rather than a paralyzing one. Mental resilience is reinforced by small successes, like finding a hidden cache of berries, safely crossing a frozen river, or successfully hunting prey under harsh conditions. Each triumph strengthens confidence and teaches valuable lessons for future survival. Dreams and imagination also play a role in mental survival. Even amidst relentless cold, humans imagine, plan, and envision outcomes, allowing them to anticipate environmental changes and develop new strategies. This cognitive foresight is critical in navigating ice-covered plains, frozen rivers, and snowbound forests. Visualizing threats, escape routes, and resource locations becomes a survival mechanism as effective as any physical tool. Stress management is essential. Extreme weather, predator encounters, and scarcity can overwhelm senses and judgment. Humans develop rituals, songs, and calming practices to maintain focus, regulate emotion, and coordinate as a group. These techniques are often intertwined with early spiritual beliefs, reinforcing communal bonds while providing psychological stability. Endurance is built not only through physical hardship, but through consistent mental training, observation, and emotional regulation. Imagine a frozen plateau under a gray sky. Snow swirling around a small human settlement. Individuals huddle together, each observing the environment, listening for distant predator calls and interpreting subtle changes in ice and wind. Mental acuity is tested continuously, with decisions about movement, hunting, and resource use carrying life or death consequences. The frozen world is both a classroom and a crucible, and the human mind, resilient, adaptable, and alert, is the most powerful survival tool of all. In this eternal ice age, the psychology of survival is as critical as fire, tools, and food. Humans develop resilience, strategic thinking, social cohesion, and mental adaptability to endure a world that offers no leniency. The mind becomes a living compass, guiding every decision, every movement, and every interaction with the frozen environment, ensuring that life persists against the relentless forces of ice, snow, and extreme conditions. In a world where the ice age never ended, survival depends as much on ingenuity as on sheer strength or endurance. Humans develop an impressive array of tools and technologies, crafted to withstand extreme cold, frozen terrain, and the unpredictable behavior of predators and the environment. Every invention, from simple hand axes to intricate hunting implements, reflects a deep understanding of materials, mechanics, and environmental conditions, blending practicality with creativity in ways that shape communities and daily life. Fire is the most essential technology. Maintaining warmth in an unending ice age is a constant challenge, and humans refine techniques to start, protect, and transport fire in frozen conditions. Methods include using friction with dry wood hidden under snow, striking stones to create sparks, or even leveraging volcanic or geothermal activity where available. Humans develop insulation systems for fires, constructing stone or ice windbreaks, arranging embers for long-lasting heat, and transporting embers between camps to avoid starting from scratch each time. Fire provides warmth, cooks food, melts ice for water, and acts as a deterrent against predators, becoming the foundation of all other technologies. Shelter is another critical innovation. Humans create dwellings capable of withstanding extreme cold, blizzards, and shifting ice. Snow-packed walls, layered hides, and insulated structures protect against the wind and cold, while communal arrangements allow shared warmth and safety. Techniques evolve over time, from temporary igloo-like structures to semi-permanent shelters near rivers, cliffs, or forested refugia. Humans learn to engineer ventilation to prevent smoke inhalation while maximizing heat retention, demonstrating early architectural thinking in a frozen landscape. Hunting tools are refined for Ice Age conditions. Spears, harpoons, and bows are designed to penetrate thick hides, withstand cold brittleness, and allow long-distance strikes across ice or snow. Blades are sharpened from stone, bone, or ivory, sometimes reinforced with fire treatment or layering techniques. Traps, snares, and ice-based hunting platforms are constructed with careful observation of predator and prey behavior. Humans not only hunt for sustenance, but also gather materials for clothing, tools, and shelter, integrating survival technology into every aspect of daily life. Clothing and insulation technologies are vital. Humans create layered garments from furs, hides, and plant fibers to preserve body heat. Sewing techniques improve over generations, with bone needles, sinew thread, and layered construction maximizing warmth while allowing movement. Footwear is designed to protect against frostbite and provide traction on ice, using flexible hides or lacing techniques to prevent snow from entering boots. These innovations are as critical as hunting tools, enabling humans to venture across frozen plains and icy rivers with confidence and endurance. Transportation technologies emerge to navigate frozen landscapes. Sledges, snowshoes, and primitive skis allow humans to cover greater distances efficiently, carry supplies, and evade predators or storms. Innovations are based on careful observation of terrain, snow behavior, and animal movement, and are refined over generations. Sleds may be pulled by humans or domesticated animals adapted to cold, creating networks of mobility that expand hunting territories and resource-gathering potential. Ice-based technology is unique to the eternal Ice Age. Humans learn to manipulate ice for shelter, tools, and hunting. Blocks of ice become walls, platforms, or even temporary bridges across frozen rivers. Sharp shards can function as cutting tools, while channels cut in ice-guide water or serve as fish traps. Humans develop subtle techniques for reading ice thickness, stability, and hidden currents, transforming frozen surfaces into functional landscapes rather than obstacles. Water technology also adapts to frozen conditions. Humans develop methods for melting ice safely, filtering snow for drinking water, and storing liquid water in insulated containers. Knowledge of seasonal thaw patterns, safe water sources, and emergency reserves becomes critical. Simple innovations like insulated pits, heated containers, or snow-covered storage areas allow communities to secure water for survival in environments where flowing rivers may be frozen or inaccessible. Humans integrate knowledge of predator behavior into technological design. Defensive structures, spikes, and barriers are developed to protect camps and food stores. Observation of wolf, saber-tooth, or bird hunting patterns informs placement, timing, and reinforcement of these structures. Technology is not static. It evolves continuously in response to environmental challenges and the intelligence of apex predators, blending observation, creativity, and experimentation. Even recreational or cultural technologies emerge. Humans create tools for signaling, marking territory, and storytelling, using materials sourced from ice, bone, wood, and fur. Fires, carvings, and musical instruments reinforce social cohesion, educate the young, and preserve knowledge about survival strategies. Technology is intertwined with culture, blending practical survival with expression, innovation, and communication. Imagine walking through a frozen landscape where humans, bundled in layered furs, carry handcrafted tools, sleds, and fire embers. They cross ice bridges, read animal tracks, and build shelters from snow and stone, moving with precision and confidence honed through generations. Every tool and invention represents countless observations, experiments, and lessons learned in a world where survival depends on intelligence, creativity, and the clever application of available resources. In this eternal ice age, survival tools and technology define human existence. Fire, clothing, shelters, hunting implements, ice innovations, and water management systems shape every aspect of life. Humans become engineers, inventors, and strategists, using knowledge and creativity to endure a world of perpetual cold, ice, and danger. In a world where the ice age never ended, survival is intimately tied to the ability to locate, capture, and preserve food in an environment that offers little abundance. Scarcity is a constant pressure, shaping daily life, movement patterns, and social organization. Humans must develop not only the physical skills to hunt, trap, and gather, but also the strategic thinking to anticipate seasonal changes, predator behavior, and the shifting availability of resources across frozen landscapes. Hunting strategies evolve through careful observation. Humans learn to track animals across snow, ice, and frozen forests, interpreting footprints, broken branches, and subtle shifts in the terrain. Knowledge of migration patterns becomes critical. Large herbivores, such as mammoths and reindeer, move seasonally, following grass and lichen, while predators patrol territories influenced by both prey abundance and the frozen geography. Understanding these patterns allows humans to predict where to find food before desperation sets in. Weaponry is adapted to the unique challenges of an eternal ice age. Spears, bows, harpoons, and traps are reinforced to withstand freezing temperatures and brittle materials. Blades are carefully crafted from stone, bone, or ivory, and tested for durability in cold conditions. Hunting often requires cooperation, with humans using coordinated drives, ambushes, or ice-edge traps to capture large or dangerous prey. Communication and timing are as crucial as physical skill, demanding patience, precision, and deep knowledge of animal behavior. Humans also develop techniques for preserving food. In a frozen world, ice and snow become natural refrigeration, but proper storage still requires ingenuity. Ice pits, snow-packed caches, and suspended platforms protect meat from scavengers while slowing decomposition. Smoking, drying, and fermenting techniques are refined, allowing communities to store surplus and survive periods when hunting yields little. These methods represent a blend of experimentation, observation, and adaptation to environmental constraints. Food scarcity affects social structure. Sharing is essential. Cooperative hunting and food distribution strengthen group cohesion and survival odds. Those who hoard or mismanage resources risk conflict or ostracization, while successful hunters gain respect, influence, and social authority. Knowledge about hunting grounds, tracking skills, and seasonal resources becomes a form of power, transmitted through mentorship and storytelling, to maintain group survival and cultural continuity. Smaller animals and plants play a vital role when large prey is unavailable. Humans diversify their diet by trapping rabbits, birds, and fish, foraging for berries, roots, and edible fungi. Each food source has unique challenges. Tracking small, fast-moving prey, avoiding poisonous plants, or harvesting in snow-covered areas. Resourcefulness becomes key, as survival requires exploiting every available opportunity without depleting essential ecosystems. Humans also adapt to unpredictable ice conditions. Frozen rivers, shifting ice sheets, and blizzards can isolate groups from traditional hunting grounds. Flexible strategies are critical, requiring scouting, improvisation, and contingency planning. Temporary camps, caches, and emergency reserves allow communities to endure periods when movement is limited or prey is scarce. These strategies are developed over generations, becoming embedded in cultural knowledge and passed through oral history. Predators affect hunting choices and tactics. Humans must avoid confrontations with wolves, saber-tooths, and other apex predators that compete for the same food sources. Understanding predator behavior becomes as important as understanding prey, as misjudgments can lead to deadly encounters. Humans develop decoys, noise-making devices, and cooperative hunting to reduce risk while increasing yield, balancing aggression with caution in an unforgiving environment. Observation and innovation also extend to tools for trapping and fishing. Ice edge nets, frozen river snares, and bird traps increase efficiency. Humans study animal behavior carefully. How seals surface through holes, how birds flock to food, how herbivores follow patterns of lichen or grass, integrating natural knowledge into practical techniques. Success in food acquisition depends on a combination of careful planning, timing, and adapting tools to the environment. Imagine a frozen plain stretching endlessly. Humans crouch behind snow ridges, scanning distant mammoth herds while predators lurk nearby. Groups coordinate ambushes, using icy terrain to channel prey, timing their movements with wind, snow, and the sun's low angle. Meat is harvested, shared, and stored with care, while smaller prey and plant resources supplement the diet. Every action, decision, and tool reflects a constant negotiation with scarcity, an intimate understanding of nature, and the unyielding intelligence required to endure a frozen world. In this eternal ice age, food scarcity shapes behavior, culture, and innovation. Hunting strategies, preservation techniques, and resource management define human survival, requiring observation, ingenuity, and cooperation. Life is a continuous negotiation with a frozen, often hostile environment, where every meal represents a combination of skill, knowledge, and strategic planning. As the icy winds settle and the frozen world fades behind us, thank you for joining this journey through time. If your curiosity was sparked, tap like and subscribe to keep exploring these hidden worlds together. Every click is a spark, lighting the path for the next adventure. Until next time, let your imagination wander, and I'll see you in the next story.